Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Gateway Gospel Program, a very special edition because I'm sitting here in our church's sanctuary with my very good friend, Mr. Jonathan Feldstein, the president of the Genesis 12:3 organization and a personal friend of mine, a father of 6, a grandfather of even more now, right?
More coming.
More coming. But a father of a young man and also a father-in-law of another young man that have both been combat soldiers in the IDF as of recent. And it was a very distinct and wonderful privilege to have him in our church fellowship. He's going to be speaking to us, to our Wednesday night congregation that's going to be here. But we've made this relationship with Jonathan. It's been a wonderful relationship for our church. It's been a wonderful relationship for me personally and my parents also, our pastor, my father. It's been a wonderful relationship for them. But I'm so glad that he traveled. And Jonathan, we welcome you. We welcome you to our church. We welcome you to our program once again. And we've done this over Zoom in the past, but now we're doing it face-to-face, which to me is... I don't want to say more meaningful because all of our conversations have been meaningful, but it's more intimate.
Yes.
And I feel I like the intimacy of face-to-face conversation, which is wonderful. So I know a lot of folks that watch our television program and all of our media that we produce have followed right along with the Genesis 12:3, right along with many of your articles and media that you're putting out and producing. And many have prayed for Israel as an entire nation, obviously, but also your family in particular. They've prayed. And I know folks are anxious to receive an update and kind of what is the status in Israel right now, what's going on.
Yes.
So let's start with some of the things you think could be lies that are being portrayed in the American media concerning the situation in Gaza.
Sure. Well, first of all, I just want to say also it's been a delightful friendship and relationship here with the church, with you and your family. And when I came in last night, I just felt like I was home again. Mm-hmm. So I'm really glad to be here with everybody. Yeah. It's funny. I suspect that this has happened in other wars, but I feel like we have a war on multiple fronts right now. One of them being the war against truth or against lies, the war of truth. And what we're seeing, and it's been growing quite a bit, not just here in the American media, but in the whole international community, with South Africa leading the charge against Israel since we spoke last. Bringing charges against Israel for committing genocide against Palestinian Arabs, charges for ethnic cleansing. These are things that are, they're so ridiculous, it's almost ridiculous to even be speaking about it, because if you look at even the numbers that Hamas has been promoting, and those are the only numbers that come out of Gaza. Nobody has an accurate number, but when they talk about the Gazan Health Ministry, we know that that's an arm of the Hamas terrorist organization. So just this week, if I'm not mistaken, the number that came out of total people who have been killed is 37,400. I think that's the number. And that's in a war that's almost 9 months old. And why is that significant? Because even if this number is accurate, which the United Nations has debunked. The United Nations itself, which is not a pro-Israel institution by any stretch, recently came out and said, no, you're overcounting by 10,000. You don't have numbers. But let's go with their 37,000. Nearly half of them, by Israeli accounts, are combatants or terrorists who we've killed in battle. And we know this because we're keeping an accurate track, not only on how many terrorists are no longer in operation, but also because we're actively concerned not to kill innocent civilians. And so Israel's very, very careful about that. So even if the 37,000 is an accurate number, about half of them are combatants. And so you can't say that the majority are women, and certainly not children. I was watching on my trip here recently someone from UNICEF talking about all the dead children. Yeah, unfortunately that's what happens in war. There are, but they're not the majority, and that's really important to know, especially as Israel is continuing to have combat, but continuing now to have to fight in the International Criminal Court, where I think we've seen an increase since the last time I saw a number from Gaza of about 3,000 casualties. That's not a genocide. Those are very, even if Hamas is inflating those are very legitimate numbers in combat, especially considering the number of combatants that have been killed. So that's one thing that's super important to know. The other fact that's important in war is usually there's a 9-to-1 ratio of civilians killed in war.
Oh, wow.
As compared to combatants. Here, if we look at the Hamas numbers as being accurate, which we know they're not, you see nearly a 1-to-1 ratio. And the assumption in that is that all of the non-combatants or women and children are not in fact terrorists. And we were talking earlier about the fact of the recent hostage rescue, where we had this incredible campaign and military operation with great intelligence to go in and rescue 4 of the living Israeli hostages. All of the hostages were living in people's homes. So are those combatants? Are those terrorists? Are those legitimate targets? Or are they civilians who just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time? To me, if you're holding hostages for more than 8 months, then you are a combatant.
I feel the same way.
Right? And so you have to factor in all of these things to really look at the numbers. So the notion of genocide, it's ridiculous. It's not even close.
Yeah.
It's not even close. And the last thing maybe I'll say about that is genocide is with the intent to eliminate an entire people.
Yeah.
The Jewish people in the Holocaust, what they called the civil war, the genocide in not Uganda, in Rwanda, between the Hutus and the Tutsis, a genocide, probably the case. The Armenian genocide in the early 1900s.
The Yugoslavia and the
Yugoslavia, and these are all actual legitimate genocides in the sense that the objective was to eliminate an entire people. If Israel is committing a genocide, we're very successful at lots of things. It's probably the least effective genocide in the entire world, because since 1948, when Israel declared independence, you've seen the Palestinian Arab population mushroom, blossom. How is it possible that from 1947 you've seen a few 100,000 Palestinian Arabs in Gaza today to over 2.3 million? That's not genocide. So that's real important to know. And then the other big thing that we need to debunk is the idea of crime against humanity or war crimes, also because Israel, and I know this firsthand living there, but I know this firsthand also because we're friends with somebody who works as a lawyer in the army, and every single target is vetted, and what may be coming in Lebanon, which we'll talk about, is also, targets are already predetermined largely, and there have been many military operations called off because of the presence of civilians. So we're not committing a genocide, we're not committing war crimes, we're in the midst of a war that happens to be legitimately a war of self-defense, something that if you asked all Israelis on October 6th, we would never have wanted, we would never have looked for.
Of course not.
We would have been content to live in the naive bubble that you could deal with the Hamas over there in Gaza and that they're not really going to try and kill us all. But guess what? If you let them, they will.
Absolutely. So I want to summarize just a little bit of what you were just saying. Hamas has came out with the estimate 37,000 casualties. And half of those would be terrorists.
About half. I
So
don't
that's
want
18,500.
Yeah,
The other half is civilians. Over the course of 9 months now,
correct.
right? Is that
Almost 9 months.
almost 9 months. Tell our folks listening, Jonathan, that seems like a large number, and it's not listen, any number of civilians is a bad number.
Correct.
Any number of children is a bad number. Tell the population size of Gaza.
Oh, the population is 2.3 million. So you're talking about a fraction. I can't do the math,
Yeah.
but it's a fraction.
It's the most densely populated place on
Correct.
this planet.
Correct.
And that has been by design to antagonize Israel.
Correct.
But you mentioned, and I want you to talk about this at length just a little bit, that in 1948, from 1948 up until now, that the Arab population has blossomed.
Correct.
So when the Jews came to Israel in 1948, there was I've heard this said when I was in Israel, it was swamp and desert.
Well, in 1948 was when we established independence.
Right.
When we began returning en masse in the late 1800s, it was swamp and
Okay.
desert. And Mark Twain wrote about that as well.
Yeah.
How it was a desolate land, uninhabitable.
I think I may have gotten that
Yes.
confused. Yeah, but the point is that Israel had, when the Jews came to the land of Israel, is when it really started to blossom.
Which is prophetic.
Yeah. When the remnant returned.
Correct.
Agriculture, technology.
Correct.
The fact that Israel has been in that land has been the best thing that happened to its Arab neighbors. Because the absence of Israel, they would go back to what they were doing prior to the Jews' arrival, and they would be in tribes, and they would be fighting one another.
Well, the other interesting piece that you just focused in on is that with the restoration of Jewish sovereignty and rebuilding the land and draining the swamps and irrigating the desert and making it all the success that it is, you saw an unnatural, I don't mean it in a bad way, but an unnatural growth of the Arab population. And it wasn't from birth rate. There's no way it could be from birth rate. And we know this, that historically, yes, while there were indigenous Arabs who lived in the land and always lived in the land, most people are not saying, or nobody I know is saying, that all the Arabs are foreign. That's not true. But we know that Arabs came from the Arabian Peninsula, that they came from Egypt, that they came from Syria and Lebanon, which were all one kind of, not political, but what's the word is escaping me? A physical entity, Syria and Lebanon together. And how do we know this? First of all, you see the growth. Couldn't have been from natural growth. And you also see it in their names. Their names, when an Arab in Israel or in Gaza or in Judea and Samaria has the name, for instance, Masri or El Masri, or even my former boss when I worked at the Israeli consulate in Atlanta, his last name is Masarwa. All of this comes from the Arabic word that means Egypt, which is similar to the Hebrew Mitzrayim. So we know that their family names give away where they came
I
from.
understand.
And
Okay.
if you're Hijazi, that means you come from the Hijaz in the Arabian Peninsula. If you're the name that I always use that identifies one being from Syria, but there are multiple names like this. That doesn't change our reality. The reality is that there are millions of Arabs, but it does prove the point that in fact the Arab population in Israel, which is today 20% of the state of Israel are Israeli Arabs with full legal rights and participating in everything in Israeli society. I was mentioning to you how my son's commander in Gaza is the one of two commanders in the Israeli army. He was a Christian Arab.
Yeah.
And that's fascinating. So we have that reality, and again, that goes against the notion of any notion or any legitimate, sane proof text of any genocide being committed anywhere.
Yeah. And you and I were discussing earlier about apartheid.
Yes.
And I told someone that was brought up to me about apartheid, and I said, listen, I've seen a checkpoint in Israel
Yeah.
of where the Arab population came into Israel. The we would call it migrant workers, I guess would be the appropriate terminology. It's no different than TSA at the airport. It may be not even that.
It's not even as
Yeah,
not even as significant.
Yeah,
I've
like
witnessed it.
some of them that came through there every day, they had
Correct.
cards. The guards were familiar
Correct.
with it. But that kind of segues me into my next question. A lot of people can see, and this has been shown, what's happened in Gaza. It's been shown what's happened to civilians in Gaza. They're apt to put that on. And then you see these people that are makeup artists that are basically creating photo ops.
Correct.
But you have personally visited many times, the communities that have been affected in and around the Gaza Strip by the October 7th massacre. And if you're able to, Jonathan, I know our audience would love to hear it. Some of the personal stories from those communities.
Yes. So I do host visitors, donors to the Genesis 123 Foundation at the Gaza border communities more and more frequently. It's hard to go every single time. Probably the least visually traumatizing place to go is the site of the Nova Music Festival, where if I remember correctly, 370 young people were slaughtered brutally. We're filming this, I'm not going to go into the graphics of what happened, but brutally, and from which about 90 people were kidnapped, many of whom are still in Gaza. There's an open field with small trees, and trees that are so narrow that you can't hide behind them. You can't even climb up in them. And I think of it as a cross between Auschwitz and Woodstock, where people went through a lot of music and fun, and it ended up becoming a killing field. You don't see that, but what you do see is very simple, it's not high tech, a metal stake on the ground, into the ground, and pictures of the people who were killed with their name and age, and beautiful pictures. I mean, they're gorgeous pictures from gorgeous people, and their families want them remembered the way they were in the peak of their life before they were slaughtered. And each of these individual places have become a mini memorial in and of itself. What you do feel there, what you do experience there, is the fear. You imagine yourself being there, with terrorists coming from all directions, opening fire, seeing people getting slaughtered, hearing the sound of their being killed, and with nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. That's terrifying. There's a place very close to there, which I don't think it has a name. It used to be a dirt lot, but if you were to drive into any car dealer in America here, you can imagine dozens or hundreds of cars, depending on how big the car dealer is, and the famous American line, what do we need to do to get you to drive out of here with a new car today?
Yeah.
You can imagine that. Everyone watching this can imagine such a car lot. Well, there's a dirt lot that's now become a memorial for 1,600 vehicles that were shot up, that were hit with RPGs, and that were torched in such a way that the only thing left is the metal frame.
Is there blood in these vehicles, Jonathan?
Well, that's a great question. In the ones that were torched, there's nothing left. People who were in those were turned to ash. The temperatures were so high, and the terrorists, we know this, the terrorists, wasn't coincidental. They came with weapons and chemicals to turn these cars into mini incinerators. In other cars, the ones that were shot up, you can see on many of them a blue and white sticker that indicates someone died in there. The significance of that, I don't know if you knew this when you asked the question, is in Judaism, when someone dies, the body and all of the human remains are treated with the utmost of respect. So if there's blood splattered around, someone comes in and wipes the blood, and all of that is buried. There's so many vehicles. Initially the idea was that these vehicles became their coffins, and the idea was to create a huge pit and bury it all, because
that's why I asked the question as to
so that hasn't happened yet and probably won't happen, because I'll tell you, each time I go to this site, it becomes progressively more developed in the sense that there are now QR codes. So you can hold your phone and read whose car that was and something about them.
Wow.
And there are other things that you can learn, and there's now 2 or 3 big tented areas because it's just a big dirt field and it's hot when you're standing there. So it's probably de facto becoming a permanent memorial, and those cars won't be buried. And that was a discussion in Israel as to what to do and how to deal with the human remains in many of these vehicles. And that's a powerful place to go. When you go into the communities, I've only been into 2 of them. One where you don't physically see the massacres that took place because the terrorists who came in, they're all communities that are really adjacent to the Gaza border, and you can, from this one community that's called Nativ HaAsara, you can see into northern Gaza, and with binoculars you can see into the buildings in northern Gaza. And you can often hear, if there's fighting going on, you can hear fighting going on in there, and you can hear artillery shells on the Israeli side going out. That community was initially attacked by 6 terrorists with motorized hang gliders. They flew in to Israel, well armed, and not only well armed, but with power bars so that they could keep going. And
wow.
Yeah. And there were only 17 people killed in that community. But as we were talking earlier, the terrorists knew where the leaders of the community were and targeted them.
Well, that's kind of where I was going to go next.
Okay.
When people, and I don't know that this would be for our audience, but there is this narrative and sentiment towards Palestinians, like they're even the ones that aren't members of Hamas are just completely innocent in this, and they're just caught up in the middle. But you and I discussed, and what you're discussing, what you just broached the subject on, they knew.
Yes.
Hamas had active intelligence of these communities.
Intelligence, detailed sketches. They knew who lived where, and they knew who the first targets were.
Yeah, and I shared with you that I won't share now, someone that I knew.
Yes.
Not directly, but they were specifically targeted.
Yes.
Because of where they were at and what they were doing.
Correct.
And Hamas sent their canaries. And you talked about 3 reasons as to why these Arabs do that. And you can, if you don't care, Jonathan.
Oh, sure.
Tell about, like, right now, Israel's not letting very, very many Arab workers in.
Correct, and we have that in our community. Mm-hmm. I was telling you before how from my living room window, I look out over a Palestinian Arab village less than half a mile away. There's no fence between us, and it doesn't matter because we learned how much can a fence do, what happened on October 7th. But there's no fence. Just happens where we live is the gate where before October 7th, hundreds of workers, Palestinian Arab workers, would come into our community to work, but there haven't been anyone coming over there. It's think of a commuter lot where people drive their cars to a bus or to a train and park for the day. They had that commuter lot in a dirt lot on the other side, which I look out every day. I can see it with a naked eye. I don't need any magnification. And I can see there have been no workers coming across there. Now there's indication that workers may be coming back, which has meant people in our community and other communities are protesting. We don't want them. And this goes to your question. Why? Because you don't know if Muhammad, the electrician, or Imad, the carpenter, or Omar, the contractor, or these other people, and I'm giving you real names of people
Sure.
that have been in our home. We don't know if they're actual terrorists, members of Hamas, if they are known by Hamas and someone says to Omar, hey, where do the Feldsteins live, and are they armed, and do we need to get them first, or can we wait because they can't fight back? Or are they going to be threatened by Hamas to say, hey, Omar, we know you're going in to the Jews every week and every day and doing working there. If you don't bring this bomb because you're allowed to bring your car in, then we're going to kill your family.
Yeah.
And all of those are reasons why most people where we live don't want Arabs to come back. And by the way, I have to say on a personal note, I feel for them. I feel for the people who are not earning a living. They would make a great living.
Yeah, that would want peace.
Well, I don't know if they want peace or not. I'm no longer convinced how many of them want peace, because the other corollary to what we were just talking about is that still today, just another recent, last week, another Arab opinion poll showed that the majority of Palestinian Arabs support Hamas.
Is it near 80? Is that correct?
85%.
85%.
85%.
Even after October 7th.
October 7th made them more proud.
Yeah, it was like a campaign rally almost.
Well said.
For Hamas.
Yes, well said. So we don't want them in, and I know because we have friends who work in the construction industry and work in other things, and they're close with Arabs. I had a guy named Mohammed who came in, and he would help us with small projects. He stopped texting me after a while, but right away he said, call, hey, we don't have any food, we don't have any money. Can you provide us any work? Even though he knew he couldn't come in to our community. There are people who have met him and given him money. A neighbor of mine who's a good friend, which is very interesting to talk about. We're right-wing Israeli settlers, and people have the image that a settler is a bad anti-Arab person. My friend Barry was over at my house a few weeks ago, and he says, yeah, I don't remember who it was. I owe somebody some money, and I don't know, can they come to the gate? Can I even just pass the money through that I owe them without them coming in to the community? And I said, wow, yeah, they can, but how amazing that you're even caring about that. And of course, well, I owe him money. Why would I not?
Yeah.
And that's the right answer, but it's an uncomfortable answer for a lot of people because we don't know what we're funding anymore.
Sure.
And I don't have a gun. We've never talked about that. But my kids have wanted me to get a gun. They think I should.
I think it's probably.
You think I should
think
too?
it's probably a good idea.
Yeah,
especially
where we live, we have these challenges, and we don't know, and that's upset in a big picture how a lot of Israelis are looking at Arabs in general now. There were a lot of us who thought that, yeah, we can make peace, maybe even have a Palestinian state, and live quietly side by side in prosperity.
Yeah.
October 7th, I suppose,
I think that ended it.
pun intended,
Yeah.
blew that up.
Yeah, it's.
Blew that
I think that if anyone now brings up a two-state solution, it's just, you can see how ludicrous that is.
It is.
And this research that you're talking about, the 85% poll that is conducted, is not it's an independent
Correct.
research.
Correct.
It's not us, American government doing it. It's not the Israeli government.
No, it's an independent Palestinian.
It's an independent
Arab
Palestinian group, and those numbers are not inflated, and it's
Correct.
very obvious. But I think one thing that people realize is that October 7th, and we have to kind of face the reality of it, was a catastrophic failure.
Yes, on many levels.
On many levels. And we were talking, and you were just talking about these Arabs coming in. You told me a story, and I hope you can share it, about one of the weapons vaults
Oh,
that was in these villages, that they knew exactly
sure.
where that was at.
Sure. So this is the one I was talking about is in Kibbutz Kfar Aza, also right on the border, and we can share the pictures. as well. The intelligence was so good that they not only knew who were the leaders of the community who were essentially assassinated in their own homes, they were killed first, but they also knew, unlike in our community, because we live in Judea and many people are armed and we are not left-wing, and many of the people in these communities on the Gaza border were very left-wing, operative word being were. And they believed in peace, and they didn't feel like they needed arms. They were living in Israel proper, not across the border among Palestinian Arabs. So they weren't armed, and the weapons for their rapid response team were all kept in one building in the middle of the community. And the terrorists knew where that was. So in the process of killing the leaders and the members of the rapid response team, they set up a sniper to kill anyone getting close to where the weapons were kept. So I've walked on this, yard, a small yard, where 10 or 20 men who were going that morning to try to get weapons were assassinated, were shot down in the middle of the field. And then when you look in the communities, in the homes, there's a whole row of homes for the young members of the community. Small apartments, probably not more than 700, 800, maybe 1,000 square feet for the whole studio-size apartment. Most of them you can't go in, but you can just see the outside and the devastation. There's one of these apartments that the mother of the woman who was killed there specifically wanted people to go in and see the atrocity.
Wow.
And I'll share the pictures with you, and you can share them here. But what's so astounding, and it's important to emphasize how small a space, and a studio apartment, right? Not multiple bedrooms. The amount of bullet holes in the walls, in the ceiling, it was deliberate carnage. You don't need that. I've never shot, no, it's not true. I've shot a gun. I've never shot a gun at a person. You don't need that many bullets in a 1,000 square foot and an 800 square foot apartment to kill two people. They shot up everything. And the inhumanity of that is so profound when you go into these communities now. Nobody's moved back to them. They're all basically abandoned. You want to hope that they go back. There should be a preservation of the memory of the people who were killed, and
sure.
But you also don't, if you're living there, I'm not sure that you want that in your backyard.
I understand that aspect too. Absolutely, that many people died in
correct
that small of a space.
Correct.
And that type of community, because obviously, like small communities here, I would imagine that the people were very close knit.
Very.
Knew one another.
Very, like family.
You had mentioned, and I know you don't want to give the details about some of your children, just recently, of the 10 soldiers that were killed. Not long ago, that one of your daughters knew.
Yes, one of my daughter's roommates was one of the soldiers who was killed when this horrific attack took place. Multi-casualty, 10 soldiers killed in one day. And that's for this daughter, for my third daughter. That's the second time that she's had a close friend lose a brother. The first one, who died about 4 months ago, 5 months, I don't remember, was just expecting their first baby.
Wow.
So the baby who was born about a month ago was born already without a father. And yeah, it's close to home. I was talking to my wife the other day, because I was traveling when this all took place, and we're talking about how many funerals that my kids have gone to. It's...
Your son is 25?
Yes.
Your daughters are, one's older?
I have a 31-year-old, I have a 29-year-old, 27-year-old, and my youngest daughter is 20, I should know this,
It's okay.
She's 22 or 23 now.
And you have an 18-year-old
And
son.
18, who's turning 19 and going into the Army in August.
Wow.
But my youngest daughter also has a very serious boyfriend who's now, as we speak, been called back up into reserves. He's not a combat soldier, he's in intelligence in the north.
Oh, wow.
And his base, let's just say the terrorists in Lebanon know very well where his base is, and their base is under fire, not infrequently.
But the point I was getting to, Jonathan, young people that age should be going to graduations and not funerals.
Correct.
You know,
Correct.
25-year-old young men, 27-year-old young ladies, you know, all we're not meant to have to go to that many funerals of associations.
It's changing a whole generation of Israelis. And my son, you know this, my son's first wedding anniversary is on July 2nd.
Yeah.
So he was called up. They were married all of 3 months and 5 days when he went into the Army for 4 months. And so until he was discharged this past February, he had spent most of his married life in the Army, half of which he spent in Gaza.
Wow.
So, and he lives with this cloud over him, knowing that when a war starts, we're already in a war with Lebanon, but when active combat in Lebanon starts, that he'll probably be called up and go into Lebanon.
Let's talk about that for a moment, Jonathan. You had mentioned to me concerning, now, a lot of people that would watch this would know. Some people don't know, and that's okay if you don't know. Imagine Gaza's in the southern portion of Israel,
Correct.
near Egypt.
Correct.
And what we're talking about now, where Hezbollah and some other terrorist organizations are at, is in the northern portion.
Correct.
So you live at Ephrat, which is near Bethlehem.
Correct.
Which is essentially, biblically, it is Bethlehem.
Correct. Good.
And you're one of those settlers that it's settling on land that was occupied by Jews 3,000 years ago. I don't know if that technically makes you a settler.
No, I use the pejorative word because of the paradox.
Absolutely. It's incredible that you can put a shovel in the ground and dig anywhere where you live and find something that belonged to Jews 2,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago. I mean, it's
correct.
It's incredible.
Yeah, when you come, I'm going to show you some cool stuff in my neighborhood.
I hope to get there soon. But so you're near Jerusalem. In relation to where you're at, explain to our audience where Hezbollah would be in the north.
Okay, before I do, by way of context, on October 7th, we were waken up by rockets. It's very interesting when I think about it. I was not quite fully asleep, and I was hearing booms in the distance, but I didn't know what they were until the air raid siren that woke us up and got us out of bed that morning. But it didn't make any sense why I was hearing boom, boom, muffled booms. We realized now after the fact that those were Iron Dome rockets shooting down missiles that were coming in that morning from Gaza. But all that day, since it was Shabbat, we didn't turn on our phones. We didn't turn on the TV. We just stayed at home, didn't go out, and we're talking about what could be happening 40 miles from the Gaza border, 40 miles away from us, inside Gaza, that they were shooting rockets that were making it as far as literally over our building. I don't know the distance between Jerusalem, which is our neighbor, and the Lebanese border, but if we're 40 miles, it's got to be 150 or maybe more miles to the north. It's about, with no traffic, you can drive to the Lebanese border from where I live in probably under 3 hours.
Wow.
So it's close.
Yeah.
But Hezbollah, unlike Hamas, has not just rockets, but precision GPS-guided missiles. And the low estimate of what they have is 150,000. There's a high estimate of more than 300,000. And these missiles, because they're GPS-guided, means that Israel's been jamming GPS all over the country because we don't want them actually hitting their targets. But the problem is they've been shooting dozens of rockets and firing dozens of drones pretty much on a daily basis for for the last number of months. But when they really unleash, currently, until we hit them, they have the ability to do thousands a day. And the military estimate on our side is that there may be as many as 500 casualties a day in Israel from their rockets hitting target, missiles hitting their targets. And that will go on for a number of weeks until we're able to control the situation militarily. And they can hit almost all of Israel. The question will be to what extent our Iron Dome and David's Sling and Arrow anti-missile and anti-rocket systems can take down all of their incoming things, as well as drones, which make it much harder. But
there's another missile intercepting system, and he sits on high.
Yes.
And he watches Israel.
Correct.
And Israel's his people.
Yes.
And he protects Israel.
True.
Yeah.
But I don't know if we've had this conversation that I'm about to share. People ask me often since the war began, how has it changed your faith? And I think the simple answer is it hasn't. But it makes me look at my life and the Bible much differently, because God hasn't changed. His protection of Israel hasn't changed. But when I read about biblical wars, we don't typically read, there's no fine print. We're not reading about the 59-year-old men who are fighting alongside with their 25-year-old sons and the actual fear that they had. And we're not reading about the casualties, which there were. And we're not reading about the injuries and permanent life-changing physical.
Absolutely.
We're not reading about that, but you know that that happened. And even with all the loss, and I get very choked up very easily when I think about it, it gives me a strange sense of comfort to know that we're just in a sequel to the biblical wars. It's the same God. He's the Iron Dome. I don't know if anyone's ever called him that, but he is the Iron Dome. And nevertheless, you tell me, you're the pastor, I don't know if there's any text that tells us that it's all going to be safe, that no one's going to get hurt. So I live with that strange comfort of seeing now over 300 soldiers killed in combat, many because of friendly fire, over 1,200 massacred on October 7th, still 116 hostages who are in captivity in Gaza. I get a strange sense of comfort, at least knowing that God, while He hasn't changed and He does have our back, He never promised that it was going to be perfect. So I can live my life accepting the imperfection and the fear that's the consequence of being a 59-year-old father of 6 and grandfather raising a generation that will be changed forever.
Right. And I'll ask this question. When did you immigrate to Israel?
20 years ago this summer.
And after October 7th, after your son-in-law, the possibility of war in the north, do you regret the decision?
Oh, no. I regretted the decision some days early on when we were making the adjustment, and there were a lot that, being an immigrant, moving from Tennessee to Kentucky or Kentucky to New Jersey or something like that, those are traumas involved, moving halfway around the world.
Absolutely.
And transporting then 5 children, 11 and under, that came with additional challenges. Not only, despite the fact, and you know this, my sincerity, that I really feel at home here. I was so excited to be able to come to Kentucky and be here with you. And I'm a proud American, and I love traveling and doing what I do. Most of me just wants to be home now, knowing that if things escalate in the north, that I'll have a challenge getting home as quickly as I need to be and want to be. But no, I never look back, and my children who are old enough to remember a little bit about life in America and see the news and know what American Jews are facing, thank us.
Yeah, I'm sure.
They thank us for making this move.
It's the strangest thing to go to Israel as a person that believes in God, that God.
Well, he's the only God.
The only God, the creator of heaven and earth.
And his name is not Allah.
And his name is not Allah. His name is Jehovah, and we should say it with reverence as we're commanded. The strangest thing, though, to me, is that when I went there, and I'd been other places, I felt I belonged. I felt at home, at peace. Even though I'd never been there, it was just this, and I'm not a guy that gets into sensationalism, and
Correct.
I try to be analytical and objective as I live my life, as we all should strive to be, and what most people do. But I'm not. It wasn't like I was overcome with emotion. It was just I felt a personal identity to this land.
Yes.
And I know you feel that personal identity to this land. Has your personal identity and your attachment to the land strengthened through all this, Jonathan?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Today, when you can go on the New York City subway and any college campus or most college campuses and hear chants about how Zionists are evil, I am a more ardent, proud Jew and Zionist than ever before. And yeah, I live in fear. There is fear.
Absolutely.
There is trauma in my life. I don't sleep well for often, certainly for the 2 months that my son was in Gaza, but for a whole lot of reasons. And I weep for our people and everything, all of the traumas that we're experiencing as a nation and as a people. That's all real, but that doesn't minimize at all the tremendous sense of pride, the tremendous sense of purpose, and even the fact that I look at my grandchildren, and sad to say, I don't believe that short of the Messiah coming, that we are going to live in peace in the next 15 years when my oldest grandson will be going into the army. Yeah, unless there's any reason he can't serve in a combat position, he's going to be a combat soldier like his father.
Yeah.
And that gives me a great sense of pride, and it gives me a great sense of trepidation.
Of course it does.
And sadness that why do we have to live like this? But proud that in 2024 we have a Jewish army with Christian commanders defending the Jewish state and the restored sovereignty of the Jewish people in the land of Israel.
And that's incredible.
Yes.
Absolutely incredible. And I think about what you just said, that you could identify with what it was to be fighting Midianites with Gideon, or hearing the report about Caleb's victory at Hebron over the giants when he was 85 years old. So there's been some incredible feats that have happened in that land that you identify with as a Jew, I identify with as a Christian, but anybody that believes the Bible as we believe it can identify with and struggle with and pray for and support, as our church has been doing and going to continue to do. But I don't think everything can be war and destitution. We got to focus in on some of the good things and some of the blessings that God's given us, even in this time. And one blessing we have laying on the desk, and I want you to talk about this book, Jonathan, because it's important, providential, really, to me, of when this book came out.
Yes. This is called Israel the Miracle. It's God gave me the vision for this book in October of 2022, 6 months before Israel was preparing to celebrate our 75th anniversary. So if you look here, it says inspiring commentary by 75 Christian leaders. Actually, that's not true. It's more than 75. There are 75 essays, some of them by husbands and wives, and some of them by fathers and sons, and I forget other pairings of that nature, and including yours, which I not only love the essay, but the graphics that went along with it. And many people didn't believe that this was going to be produced in time for Israel's 75th anniversary,
Right.
because it is so comprehensive. There are over 55,000 words that were edited down from 85,000 words, and each essay is more powerful than the next. But what's beautiful about it, here I just turned to Reverend Rebecca Brimmer's essay. Her essay is entitled Tikkun Olam, which is repairing the world. And she's a good friend and the former head of ministry called Bridges for Peace. And so what's so nice about it, yours included, is that you can take a one-page essay, 800 words, 1,000 words, and sit down with a child or a grandchild and compartmentalize Israel in different ways. We have Ben Carson, we have Pat Robertson's final public statement on Israel before he passed.
Is in this book?
It's in this book, and we moved his essay to the front of the book because he died just a few weeks before we actually went to publication. His essay is super powerful. We also have Gordon Robertson, we have Ben Carson, Michelle Bachman, David Barton, American's historian, Pastor Terry Copeland Pearson's, Raphael Cruz. I mean, it goes on and on and on. One of the ones, the President Jimmy Morales, the former president of Guatemala, who moved the Guatemalan embassy to Jerusalem and writes as a Christian why it was imperative to do that. Ricky and Sharon Skaggs, who don't live that far away. And one of the ones that I'm so interested in and proud of is the former Chief Justice of South Africa, who as a Christian supports Israel, but because of his support for Israel, he receives death threats.
Oh, wow.
And this is every continent except Antarctica. And we have people from their 20s till their 90s. Kay Arthur, who lives not far from here in Chattanooga.
Yeah.
Her essay is in here. It's beautiful. It's so well done. And anyone who wants to get this, the website is israelthemiracle.com. I want to invite anyone to use the discount code Jonathan10 to save 10% off and get this. And the last thing I'll say about it, unless you have more things that I want to know more things that I should be saying, is we just received in Oklahoma, which is our fulfillment center, the next 2,500 copies, our second printing. And those were printed in conjunction with the print shop at Kibbutz Be'eri, which is one of the Gaza border communities that was attacked and devastated on October 7th. So not only are the proceeds of this book going back to bless Israel through the Israel Emergency Campaign, but even paying for the printing of the second edition or second printing, we are investing back in these communities.
So this book was a vision that you had, the Israel the Miracle, putting all these Christian leaders together. And honestly, I don't know that I belong in the same book with Dr. Ben Carson, the famous neurosurgeon from Johns Hopkins,
Right.
who's on the short list right now to be vice president of the United States. But I appreciate being included.
Well, I'll tell you why you do. You're not as well known as Ben Carson or Pat Robertson or Gordon Robertson or Paula White. But you here, this church, I don't want to use the word inappropriately, but this is your family. This is your heritage. The support of Israel is multi-generational here. And you represent something in that's unique and speaks to people differently.
Yeah. So if you want to get the book, The Israel the Miracle, you can contact Jonathan.
IsraelTheMiracle.com is the website.
IsraelTheMiracle.com is the website. You can order it. It will be shipped to your house.
Direct to your house.
To your house.
And next time I come back, you'll come here and I'll inscribe them for you.
So we have 30 that'll be here tonight. This is a Wednesday. That whoever buys the first 30 gets the guy to sign them.
Correct.
Gets them autographed. And I noticed that the president of Israel,
yes,
Isaac Herzog,
correct,
wrote a foreword for it.
He wrote a lovely introduction,
He did.
And in February, He welcomed me at the president's residence, and I presented him copies, and he loved this. He loved it because he understands the significance of Christian support for Israel, but he understood also that nothing in the world has ever been done like this. It's beautiful, it's inspiring, but it's also historic.
Right.
And you know this, interestingly enough, 25 years ago, I think it would have been harder to find 50 Christian leaders from around the world.
I agree with that.
To write essays for our 50th anniversary than it was to get 75 for our 75th anniversary.
I think that's an accurate assessment.
And I look forward in 24 more years, when we're both a little bit older.
We can have 270.
Yeah,
1,000. Yeah, that would be great. And that's part of my job, very small cog in the machine. But I have taught a few young pastors. I'm not so young anymore. But I'm old enough now to have a little bit of latitude and influence with younger pastors about the significance of Israel. And if you don't view the gospel through the lens of the covenants and the people and the land,
yes,
you won't view the gospel appropriately.
That's true. And by the way, I'm probably one of the few Orthodox Jews who you know who care about not just Christian support for Israel, because that's important.
Absolutely.
But if you don't have that foundation that you and your father and your grandfather imparted here and impart here in this church and your ministry, then you're not understanding your own faith.
Absolutely. And we can't build any building without first going back to the foundation. And when you are constructing your theology and you're constructing your worldview, whatever it may be, you need to go to the foundation of it. And when you go to the foundation of it, you'll find there was a man that lived in the land of Ur of the Chaldees. His name was Abram, and God called him out, made a great nation of him through Isaac, and then the tribal period, and then God gave the law.
Correct.
And that every mouth can be stopped before the law. So it doesn't matter who you are, what you believe. We all become guilty before the law of God. But it's an incredible book. I've read it, and I think people need to see it. But I'm going to close now, and I appreciate you, Jonathan, being with us.
Well, before you close, I want to close by just thanking you, not just the privilege of being here, and I do feel we're family now, and I'm at home here, but everything that you do and your father does, and the church physically, and the ministry, and these broadcasts, and everybody who's providing support. I mean, my goodness, I feel privileged to be your representative in Israel, with a tremendous sense of responsibility, knowing that when someone donates $1 in Kentucky, and you're entrusting me with that in Judea, that we're making the biggest impact with the greatest integrity.
And I appreciate that. I appreciate your integrity. And I want to remind everyone that would watch this, Jonathan has never solicited from us one penny. He hasn't came and asked and gave an amount for this or that. Everything that we've given has been unsolicited. This is an appropriate gentleman of integrity and a person that handles the money with integrity. And I think that that's important for any ministry or any foundation or any group, is that when folks give money, that it's handled with integrity and used appropriately for what God has planned and the need. And we're still going to meet needs. If you're watching, you're not part of our church fellowship, if you're a pastor, if you go to another church, this is a great foundation for you to be involved in and for you to give your money to. It will get to what's needed. You've heard what Jonathan has to say. You know that he knows that he's there. He knows the reality on the ground. He knows what's needed on the ground. And he's even provided some needs in Israel that are classified. We can't talk about, but brag about or anything.
Right.
But because it's just not appropriate,
right,
we don't want to broadcast and put anybody at risk. But there's been some needs security needs that have been the Genesis 12:3 foundation taken care of. And we pray that God keeps blessing you. Most of all, we pray God blesses you that have watched. And we thank you. We love you and pray that God pours down his blessings from heaven. Until the next time, may the Lord richly bless you.